everybody. My name's Amy Smith, and I am going to be editing with you, taking you through the process of me editing this flat lay that I did of the latest Click magazine. And there are several things I want to do to this image that I don't normally do, just because of circumstance and the image itself, and how I want it to end up looking, and just some other things I'll explain to you. Okay, so to get started, the first thing I'm going to do, this is the straight out of camera image. As you can see, there's a lot of weird stuff on the sides. I shot outside of the backdrop frame barriers or edges, just so I'd have plenty of room to crop and play with it that way. So the first thing I'm going to do as I come in is I'm going to look at the Adobe Color things. My R5, I shot this with my new R5, and it has a little bit of different color interpretations, I guess. So I want to look and see, because to me it looks a little green. It's a little greenish. So I am going to look and see how I want to kind of start out. And I think I'm going to start with this one because it takes a lot of the weird greens out for me. It's the Faithful. I don't know what that actually stands for, but this is already in the Lightroom thing. So anyway, we did that. Kind of an overall global change. I'm also going to do the remove chromatic aberration and the lens profile correction, just as an automatic, kind of do that in the beginning. So here's what we have to start with. I think the first thing after those things, what I'm going to do to get started is to do a crop. I want to obviously hide these edges. I want to kind of orient things that are my focal points in the rule of thirds so that it, draws our eye exactly where we want it to go. So I think I'm going to do it this way. I don't want the magazine to be even tilted even more this way. So I'm going to end up going this way so that it's a little more upright, if you will. So I think I'm going to go probably around here. I don't want too much tilt. And so as you can see, though, we still have some weird edges here sticking out where it misses the, where we don't have coverage on the backdrop. So let's bring it in here and see what we've got. I think we're really close. I have my thank you card. And this is kind of a symbolic interpretation for me. I wanted to get a picture. I love the color of her head wrap and the color of the wording, the click word there, the deep red. And I knew I had this backdrop that's a really nice deep red. And I knew I wanted to use these together because I knew it would complement really, really nicely. So I want to keep the negative space or whatever's not got things in it kind of balanced. I am intentionally cropping some of these little curly cues out, which doesn't bother me a bit. It's all good. There's a rule of third on my thank you. There's a rule of third kind of right in the middle of the magazine, which is great. It really takes our eye right there. So I think I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the balance on the edges. Nothing looks too weird or wonky. So I think I'm going to leave it as is. It is quite dark at this time, as you can see. If you look at my histogram up here, my shadows are clipped a little bit here, especially on this little thing, the scissor handle, which isn't a great big deal, but I definitely want to get my histogram more to the middle, just because of the way I do apply a preset that I like, and it darkens it as well. So actually, as I'm looking at this, I don't know if you can see this, hopefully if it drew your eye. I don't like where my edge here is right at that V of the flowers. So I'm going to change that up a little bit. That just draws my eye. I don't like how that ends right there. So I am going to do what I can to see what I can do to make this a little less in that crack of the flowers. But I want to keep this bloom as much as I can, and I have room up here to go. So I'm not at that intersection of those flower stems any longer, which I like it much better. So, but then I'm a little less over here compared to in this corner, so I'm going to bring this corner down a little bit. And I'm still got my rule of thirds on my major focal points, which is good. I'm happy with that. And I'm not in that V of those stems quite as badly as much. And well, there I am again. This is proving to be a little, I guess I don't have to have this full bloom. So I'm going to bring that in just a wee bit. Okay, I'm good with that. That's better. I'm not totally at just the completing, ending at the V of these stems, which was bothering me a little bit. So one more, I want a little more of those curlicues. I'd rather have the curlicues up there than that full bloom at the bottom. That's fine. Okay. Yes, I like it. Okay. So now, like I said, it's a little dark. We have shadows down here. It's clipping in the blacks. I'm just going to slide it right here. You can slide it on the histogram until we don't have that highlight or that warning any longer. And I'm going to just bring up the overall exposure up to 0.20, not quite a quarter of a stop. And I think that looks pretty good. We don't have any blown highlights. We don't have any more clip shadows. As you can see, when I got my magazine, there are, where the big postage address label was, it left residue, or it left some fade marks on my picture right here, on my magazine cover rather. So I'm going to have to deal with that in Photoshop. I also didn't pay enough attention and get this barcode covered. So we're going to deal with that in Photoshop, since it does, in my opinion, such a much better job in Photoshop with those kind of things. That's where I like to do majority of my cloning and fixing that kind of thing. Now these little dots right here, little specks of probably dried flower stuff, we can deal with super easy in Lightroom. I also, in Photoshop, am going to add a texture. So in case this doesn't end up being perfect because it goes so far over here, all these weird lines from the postage sticker, I'm going to apply a texture in Photoshop as well. And that will help camo some of that. And I'll show you how I do that. So I think in this part for Lightroom, so far I'm happy with the exposure. I'm happy with the colors, which I'm going to intensify a little bit with the reds. We don't want to go too crazy because we want to keep everything pretty congruent and the same. So I like to usually add some texture, and that really makes things pop and feel three-dimensional, or even more, more dimensional. It gives it some depth. I like to add a little bit of clarity. I'm going to bump the vibrance just a little bit, not much. I also am going to play with these greens just a little bit. I want the yellows to be way more green. The greens not to be yellow, but I don't want the flowers to turn yellow. I want those to stay more of the white and the blush that they are intended to be, that they were when they were live. So the greens, I'm going to lower the luminance, and that's going to darken them a little bit. And I'm also going to desaturate them just a hair, not much at all, because I just don't want that yellow glow. I'm going to take down the yellows themselves, and that's going to help make those greens more green as opposed to a yellow green. Let's see if we need to mess with the white balance. I think the white balance looks pretty good. Her skin looks great. I'm gonna just test a little bit here and see what we think if we need to change it. I'm trying to find a super neutral, something with the numbers that are all pretty close for the RGB. Those aren't bad. Ooh, that makes it really magenta-y. So I think I am going to undo that. It overall does feel green to me. So I am going to bump the magenta a little bit and counter some of that green. But I don't think it needed to be quite as much as it did when I clicked that dropper. It was not quite. I think that looks a lot better. Now my flowers don't feel as green in the white parts of the dried up blooms. Maybe bump. Yeah. Okay. So we left the temperature the same. I think that looks pretty good. So that didn't do too much to our greens that we had already messed with. I should have done the white balance first. Sorry about that. So yeah, let's get the greens away from the yellows. See if we do that, those blooms turn green. So, okay, we're going to just leave it as is. I'm really happy with how this is going so far. So I mentioned a preset. I have a preset that I like to use in a lot of my still life and flat lay and food work. So I'm going to click it. Again, it's going to darken a lot. It's just, I like the overall effect, and then I majorly tweak. So as you can see, it really darkened it. Okay, it really brought up tons of contrast. Actually, it just takes down the shadows a lot. And it increases the blacks a lot. So I'm going to bring those shadows way back up. And I am going to bring the blacks up a little bit. And it also, in order to darken it, it adds quite a bit, not a ton, but a little bit of vignetting. So I'm going to bring that back up. The thing I really like about this preset, and I usually do it a lot of times just by hand, but I wanted to see what it would do overall. It enriches the colors quite a bit. It adds some haze. If you are on your tone curve down here and you take the bottom left corner, that point, if you take it as is, it's pretty contrasty. But if you raise it up that side wall, it imparts some haze. And I really like that in a lot of instances. It softens, it makes it really moody, and I like that effect. So there's that. And so as you see, when we applied that preset, it really, it's blowing some of our whites and highlights. So I want to address that. It really bumped the highlights over here on the side, you can see. So I am going to take those highlights down. And so we lost our warning up here in the histogram, which is great. We no longer are blowing the highlights. And our whites were increased. So I'm going to take those down just a few notches just to remain in continue to have the detail in those light white areas. We don't want to lose that detail. One thing it did do that I am noticing, that preset, it, for whatever reason, in this area of the K where it drops down is much lighter, and the little edges right here are lighter than where the rest of it is. And I'm not super fond of that because her headdress and everything else is such a nice deep red. So in order to deal with that, I am going to use a brush. I think that'll be the best way to do it. And I am going to increase the size here. Oh, that worked out lovely. Came right to it. And I am going to take down the exposure, I think, a little bit, or add a little bit of contrast, bring down the shadows just a little bit, and see if we can get that to look more uniform where we want it to be, like the words above. Oops, that was a pretty sloppy paint job. I'll have to look at where that is and erase, I'm sure, where I'm missing that and going over. So let's see if we can bring down the shadows a little bit and deepen that. And that looks like it's doing a decent job. Maybe when it's not so magnified, it'll blend in enough and make me happy enough for now. And not have a halo around it, which would be really nice. That's looking better. Okay, let's pull it back out and see what we got. Can still see it a little bit. I am going to wonder, I just don't want it to be super duper. There we go. That looks good. I just took down the highlights a little bit as well, because I don't want it to be massively noticeable. And I am going to brush a little on these little tails that appear to be a little bit lighter. Okay, enough of that. That's getting nitpicky. And okay, I'm happy with that so far. Let's now, I think what we're going to do, we're going to go into Photoshop and we are going to, actually I want a little more haze on here. There. And we're happy with colors, I believe. I think she looks pretty good. Might warm it just a tad. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to take this into Photoshop and we'll do some cleanup on here. We'll get this cleaned up. We'll add a texture and then we'll see where we're at. All right. So photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop. We'll take it in. And let's see, here we are in Photoshop. So what I like to do immediately is to make a copy of a new layer of what I'm working on, so the background, the original, stays the same. And I'm not doing anything crazy to the original. So I then, the first thing I want to do is, let's deal with some of these things we need to clone out and fix on the sticker and the UPC code. So let's let's make it much larger so we see what we're doing. And there's also some, looks like it was scratched in the mail or something. There's some scratch marks we're going to have to deal with. So, okay, here we go. I think I'm going to first take the patch tool and see if I can do any kind of, whoa, that got away from me. Okay. So I'm gonna take that up a wee bit. I don't want her shiny. where the light is on her shoulder bone there. Okay, that did a decent job. And we'll clean those up. We'll clean those up with a healing brush or something too. So many ways in Photoshop to get things done, which is fantastic. If you're super good at cloning and using the clone stamp, go for it. If you're not, then use some other tools and eventually you can get it done, which is the main goal. So we're going to keep working on this and getting all these weird sticky sticker deals fixed, which I think this is doing a fantastic job. And I hope you agree. We don't want to have overlap in all these little things, so I'll fix these little weird spots, repetition, repeated patterns, etc. We don't want that. And I think, like I said, I'm going to do a texture, and here's some little rip marks that happened in the transit and shipping. So thanks USPS, but easily fixed, right? Okay. All right, so that's her shoulder. I think looks great. I'm super duper happy. Here, as we get into the shadows, it's probably going to be even easier to deal with because it's even less noticeable. We just want to make sure her arm right here is lined up. The front of her deltoid and bicep right there. And keep that all lined up. And so I don't want to go across her clavicle or her clavicle there and have weird bumpy stuff. So, okay, we're getting close here, guys. This might be a little, we're getting into some gray area here with trying to do her bone structure, but I think, like I said, it's in the shadows, and with her, excuse me, I have to deselect that. Got away from me. With her shadows and so forth right here, I think we're going to be okay. So, especially when I put that texture on, it's going to be negligible. We're not going to miss any of this. So, okay, I think that's pretty good compared to what it was. Okay, so we started with that, and here we have that. I think it looks pretty good. Like I said, we lost some bone structure in here, but I don't think that's a deal breaker for me, for my purposes for this. Okay, so now I do want to take care of this sticker, so I am going to use the clone stamp tool on this one. I need to make my brush a little bit bigger, and then we'll have to make it way smaller to get in these cracks, but I am just going to go into here and start brushing on so I get some, whoops, that's where the sticker used to be, or the thing used to be. So to use your clone stamp, you just put it out here in no man's land, so you're not going to get into any other pixels that are something else, different colors, the color that you want. Hit the Alt key, click your mouse, and it will pick up that color. So you'll see up there as I move, there's a plus sign right there. And that's where it's grabbing the pixels from that we are now covering what we don't want with. So I'm going to go around these flower petals really carefully. They're a thing of nature, so they're not perfect. So that's okay if we're not perfect either. I'm not going to get super stressed out about it as long as we're close. You can see a little bit around where I'm a little darker, because there's no, the shadow fall off is happening right there off of her in the original photo. So I'm going to make this really small so I can grab down here and get into this little nook and cranny. Oops. Took a little more than I wanted to right there, but I think I think that's going to work for us. Let's get a little teeny smaller and get right in there. Well, I don't like what that looked like. So let's try one more time. There. Okay. And this area right here, I know that's flour on the picture, but I'm going to take this off as well. I'm not really liking how that looks, kind of weird. Okay. So right through here, I can tell where there's some lines where I was doing some of the cloning. So I just am grabbing it with the patch tool, going to take it out here, and it nicely feathers and makes that not so noticeable. So, okay, look here, we've got, that's where we had the UPC code and her postage sticker lines across her chest. And here we kind of dealt with that pretty well. So I am happy. Let's zoom this back out, or rather in, out, however you zoom it back out. And I think that looks really great. Super happy with it. So now, what else I wanted to do, I'm going to get rid of these little circle dots that I am not happy with. And we could have done that in Lightroom as well with the one click with the little heel tool. But this is just as easy. We're here. Do our now. Okay, you see, I don't think I see any other weird stuff hanging out. Okay, super happy with how we're going. Now, I want to add that texture. So in order to add well, actually what I'm gonna do now, first, with all these changes I've made, I am gonna flatten this and kind of start over. So we have our background now, our new background that we did all that work on. And I am going to find a texture. To get a texture, it is a separate file that you have somewhere else on your computer. You can buy textures, you can make your own textures. So I'm going to navigate there. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. And then I am going to, which if it wasn't going straight to it. So I'm going to go navigate to wherever I have my overlays and textures, which are in a file folder. And I am going to find this particular folder. This is called Extreme Texture. And you click on it and you just hit place. So there it is. You're like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. So first thing you want to do is make it the size of your canvas that you're working on. Just pull it by the corners and get it there. And you can decrease the opacity over here so you know where, like I really want to camo where those things were on her chest. So what I'm going to do is make it a little bigger, and then I can drag it and have super textury area kind of over right where that was. So if there's any leftovers of any residual weirdness of that sticker, it's on her. And we can decrease that, obviously. So I have it placed where I want it. I'm going to click the check mark up here, and it will commit to this image. It's on there now. So I'm going to decrease the opacity even more. And as you can see, it's at like 14%. And I actually really like what it looks like. I am going to, however, add a mask and get a black brush. So a white mask is going to show us where it is all right now. If we had a black mask and inverted this, you wouldn't see it at all. And we would use a white brush to put it where we wanted it. But I want it everywhere, and then I want the ability to take it away from where I don't want it. So I'm going to use a white mask with a black brush. And I obviously need to make that brush just a wee bit bigger. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So here's my brush, and I'm hitting the bracket keys. The right bracket key makes it bigger, the left bracket key makes it smaller. And my flow is at 100, and I think I'm going to make that a lot less because I want to take off a little bit at a time. I don't want to do, if I did 100%, it would take it all off in one click. So I want to kind of decrease my flow of what I'm going to take off. And especially on her face, I don't want to have, and on the magazine overall as a whole, I don't want to have a ton of it on there. So I really like what that looks like, but I have that texture around where I'm going to decrease it even more so I can do down here on her body part area where we had that sticker. It's still there, you can see it, but it's not super, super crazy and like impeding the beauty of her and her face and her beautiful skin and the colors. So I'm just clicking it around here and there, but I think we still get the picture. We still have the effect. I think it looks really nice. Now I'm seeing stuff. I'm going to play with these greens just a little bit more since we're here, and it's so much easier to do targeted color changing in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit the hue saturation, and I am going to use the little finger thing. I'm going to find exactly what I want to deal with here, and that's these greens. And I want to change the hue of those just a little bit. I want to make them a little deeper, richer green. As you can see, this is making them kind of weird and yellowy. I want to go a little more towards the blue. And I like what that's doing. Let's see, let's get over here. I think I'm going to darken them a little bit. And I'm going to desaturate them just a little bit as well. Not a ton, because why'd we do it, you know? So I like what that did. I am going to do another hue saturation layer, and I want to play a little bit with these flowers. They are showing yellow, and I'm going to desaturate those a little bit, but I only want it on the flowers. So as you can see, it's changing the yellows everywhere. So I just want the flowers to be a little less yellow. So I'm going to take those down just a little bit. And then since that is showing everywhere, I only want that on my flowers. So I'm going to invert that, and I'm going to use a white brush, and I need to make that smaller, and I'm going to just do that right on. I'm going to increase my flow because I want it to be all over, you know, easier, so I don't have to brush and brush and brush and brush all over those. So I'm going to just go on some of these blooms that are looking kind of greeny and yellowy. And it was just mainly these little bitty kind of mini rosebuds. Everything else looks pretty good. And you can see over here on my little mask deal, you can see where it's taking it off, only where I am brushing. So I think it's looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with the outcome. I think it really, the reds look amazing. We can play with the reds just a second here, and let's try it. Let's get our little picker here and click on the reds. Obviously it comes up as red. Do we want to saturate those a little more? We can saturate them till it looks redonkulous, or we can ever so slightly saturate them. We can make them lighter and less kind of intense, or we can deepen and enrich those a little more. We can really change it up a little bit and make them more vibrant, which I kind of like that. It's not crazy. We only went down like 3 bumps, and I think it looks pretty good. Glad I did that. Okay. There's one other thing I think we need to zoom in. I saw it earlier. There is a little bit of scratchy from the magazine on her face. So I want to see if I can do that with the patch tool. Fix that just a little bit. Oh, it's not letting me do it. Let's see, Control deselect. Let's go down to this layer. Actually, you know what? I think we need to flatten. Let's just flatten it and keep what we've got, since I know that's what I want to do yet. The last thing. And I am going to, I see that she has a little thing below her lip too. A little weird looking. Make sure we get that right. Okay, good. And then here are a few more little itty bitty dust specks or something, flower pieces that made their way. Okay. Sorry, this has taken forever, but I think we got a good idea and covered a few cool different things you can do. I'm super happy with that cloning job from the sticker that was across here, and then that texture helps camo that nicely. So I'm super excited. Okay, let's take this back into, go up to File, Save, and that will take it right back into Lightroom for us. And there it is. So here is what I think that's what we took into Photoshop. We did a little bit of color work in there, and here's what we ended up with the texture, and I think it turned out great. I hope you like it. I am so sorry this took so long. Thanks for sticking with me if you did, and I really appreciate you, and I hope it was helpful with the texture, finding those embedded, place embedded, take it in and size it, play with the opacity, and it really can add some really cool things and depth and dimension to your image. So again, thanks so much. I'll stop talking now. Take care.